I can confirm that the stream is now live, Chair, and the meeting is being recorded as well. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Welcome, councillors and officers, to this live stream meeting of the Safety Committee at Bolsover District Council. This is a public meeting being streamed live to YouTube and via the council's website. If for any reason the public can no longer hear or see the meeting over the live stream, we will adjust the meeting until the connection has been re-established. This meeting is also being recorded. Tom, can you confirm who is in remote attendance at this meeting, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I will do a roll call of the people. First of all, the members of this committee who are in remote attendance, and then I will go through. I will name the officers, and I will ask the first of all, I'll go through the members, and I'll ask each member to confirm their title, confirm the ward they represent, and confirm that they can see and hear me as well. So, first of all, Councillor David Dixon.
Councillor David Dixon, chair of this meeting, and for Balborough Ward. And yes, I can hear and see. Okay.
Councillor Alan Bailey.
Yeah, Councillor Alan Bailey, member for Clown East Ward.
And can you see and hear me, Councillor Bailey?
Yes.
Councillor Josbury.
Councillor Andy Josbury, South Almington East, and I can see and hear you.
Thank you. Councillor Nick Clark.
Morning, Councillor Nick Clark, portfolio holder, carbon reduction efficiencies, and representing Bolsover East Ward, and I can see and hear everybody.
Thank you. Councillor Tricia Clough.
Councillor Tricia Clough, Alt Hucknall Ward. Yes, I can see and hear everybody. Thank you.
And Chris McKinney from Unison.
Hi, yes, Chris McKinney, Unison. I can see and hear you, Tom. Thank you.
I will now go through a list of the officers that are in remote attendance as well. And just so I don't miss anybody out, I will ask each officer to just confirm their job title and that they can see and hear me as well. First of all,
Tom, before you, there's a couple of other Unison representatives on the committee as well, just in addition to me. So I thought I'd just raise that.
Okay, yeah. Well, there's also Liz Robinson from Unison and Kevin Chilito from Unison in attendance as well. In terms of officers, there is myself, Tom Scott, governance officer, Alison Bluff, governance officer, and I'll just now go through, ask the following officers to just confirm their job title and they can see and hear me. First of all, Steve Brunt.
Yep, Steve Brunt, joint head of street scene. Thank you.
Ian Clay.
Yeah, Health and Safety Advisor, Bolsover District Council Housing.
Bronwyn MacArthur Williams.
Bronwyn MacArthur Williams, Joint Health and Safety Manager.
Someone who's their name's down as Jay Stowe. I'm not sure who that is.
Yeah, it's Jane Stokes. I'm Joint Health and Safety Apprentice.
Mark Dungworth.
Yeah, good morning. I'm Strategic Repairs Manager for Housing Repairs.
Thank you. Matthew Cooper.
Good morning. Yeah, Matthew Cooper. I'm the Corporate Property Manager.
Rebecca Hutchinson.
Yeah, good morning. Rebecca Hutchinson, Health and Safety Coordinator.
Sarah Gordon.
Hello, yes, I'm Sarah, HR Manager.
I think that's everybody, Chair. I'll hand back to you. Thank you.
Okay. Now, Tom, can you just explain some of the procedures for this meeting?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Before we start the meeting, members are reminded of the meeting etiquette that has been circulated to them. All members should have their microphones off during the meeting unless you wish to speak and you have been called on. Members attending remotely, please leave your cameras on during the meeting. Also for remote members, to request to speak, please use the chat function to type speak or raise your hand on camera. The chair will then call on you to speak during the discussion debate. When a vote is to be taken, this will be by a show of hands. For those attending remotely, please ensure your hand is visible on camera. If any member is disconnected from the meeting, please try and rejoin as quickly as possible. If you have any technical difficulties, please contact one of the support officers assigned to this meeting in my email to you. If you were about to speak, the meeting will wait a few moments for you to rejoin. Chair, I will now hand back to you to start the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'll now start the agenda. Item 1, apologies for absence.
I have one apology, Chair. That's Wayne Carter, Leisure Operations Manager.
Thank you. Are there any apologies for today? From anybody else? No? Okay. Okay. Item 2, urgent items. As far as I know, there are no urgent items for today's meeting. Item 3, okay, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations to be made for today's meeting? Take that as no. Okay. Item 4, the minutes of previous meeting, starting on page 4 of the agenda. It's the meetings from the 18th of December 2019 for approval.
I'll move the minutes be a true record.
I'll second that.
Okay. Okay, all in favour?
That's everybody, Chair. Apart, I can't see Alan Bailey's hand, Councillor Bailey's hand, Chair.
As I wasn't at the last meeting, I can't say whether they're a true and correct copy. I wasn't present at the last meeting, so I don't know whether I'm able to vote on this or not.
Similar way, Tom, I wasn't at the meeting, so I was abstaining essentially for that.
And I shall abstain.
That's fine, Chair.
Okay. Moving on to item 5, the sickness and absence Q1 report. That's April to June 2020. Can we now consider the report? Could I have Sarah Garden please to report? Would you like to begin, Sarah, please?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'll just talk you through the report that you've got in front of you, hopefully. So the average number of days lost per employee for Q1, which is April to June as mentioned, was 1.50 days. So based on that, the outturn will be 6 days per employee over the course of the year. As you can see, if you look at table 1 on page second page there, you can see the organisational outturn and the quarter breakdown over the last 3 years. And in comparison to previous years, you can see it has been a significant reduction during this first quarter. In terms of the breakdown between long and short-term sickness absence, you'll see that there's been a reduction in short-term absences and proportionately, therefore, an increase in long-term absences over the course of that quarter. But you can see in the figures below that in terms of the number of long-term cases, it is the same as the previous quarter, as shown in table 3. If you look over the page onto table 4 and 5, what you've got there in table 4 is the top 3 services proportionally experiencing the highest levels of absence, and the table below that shows the services experiencing the lowest levels of absence. Table 5, that just shows there the reasons for sickness absence. And as you can see, for the first quarter, stress and depression is the highest reason, followed by other than headaches and migraines. It is following a similar pattern to in previous quarters. Just over the page there, what you've got in Appendix 1 is a breakdown per summary and directorate as well. So that's the full breakdown for the quarter, depending on the service area. So you've got the short-term days, the number of employees absent, and the same for the long-term absences as well, the total number of days and the number of employees absent. Then at the end of that table there, you've got the average number of days lost per employee. So that just gives you that breakdown per service area. Over the page onto figure 2, just above that, you have the information there regarding employees that are employed by North East Derbyshire District Council but provide services to Bolsover as well in terms of the environmental health and ICT teams. So you've got the information there for those service areas. And then in figure 2, what you've got is a breakdown per directorate. Now, in comparison to previous reports that have been put forward, following the restructures at corporate level, those directorate names have now changed. So from the 1st of April, we are using those new directorates, and that's how the figures have been broken down for the first quarter. Then what you've got in the table following that is the reasons for absence within those directorates as well. So I'm happy to take any questions on the report if anybody has any comments or thoughts. Thank you.
Chair, we have hands raised from Chris McKinney and Councillor Clough.
Okay, Chris, if you'd.
Thank you. It's just with the benefit of the Union Employees Consultation Committee about an hour ago. I know, Sarah, we talked a little bit about the kind of the breakdown per, like a meaningful breakdown per office in relation to some of the, particularly in terms of the COVID symptoms related ones. So I wondered if you wanted just to add to your report about what we talked about and how you might add that kind of meaningful data about workplaces going forward, please.
Yeah. Yes, thank you, Chris. Yeah, we have been collecting information specifically regarding COVID symptoms and any potential employees that may have tested positive for that. So we have received a request at the UECC meeting that we provide some information in relation to that, and particularly in relation to office areas and where individuals might be coming into the actual workplace itself, if there are any concerns regarding that area. That information has been provided informally to the senior management team as well, and we are keeping an eye on that for monitoring purposes. But what we'll try and do is summarise all of that. It is an ever movable picture on that front, because we have some employees who display symptoms but they end up being a cold or allergies that they've experienced over the summer months as well, because of the overlapping symptoms between COVID-19 and other health conditions that individuals may have. So what we'll try and do is try to provide that summary, just so that we've got a bit of analysis regarding the recent months and with the added pandemic information in there, just to provide that analysis, but also look at things moving forward as well. So we are looking after the well-being and safety of employees in the workplace.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Trish, if you want to come in, please.
Thank you, Councillor Clough, Old Hucknall Ward. On table 4 on page 3, in the final column on quarter 1, in the current year, it says as number 1 being the highest levels of absence, leaders and executive team. So are members being monitored as well? Because I'm a bit confused there, because I didn't realise that members were being recorded for attendance.
Yeah, just to clarify, no, that is the name of one of the service areas within the organisation. So councillors aren't being recorded in terms of sickness absence. This is wholly related to employees.
All right, thank you. I understand
no problem.
that. Yeah, the other things that I noticed was going from table 4 to table 5, from like the top 3 to the bottom 3, people or areas like elections and customer services have gone from being in the top group now to being in the bottom group. And I wonder, is that in any way related to them being able to work from home or not?
Yes, there will be some circumstances where that has facilitated the situation, particularly in customer services, because we had several long-term cases where facilitating home working would have been of benefit, and previously that wasn't an option before. But now it is an option. It did come into place a good 6 months prior to the lockdown period, but obviously it's being facilitated a lot more now due to the current situation. So it is beneficial in terms of supporting attendance at work and performance within those service areas as well.
And is that something that you think will be recommended to carry on in the future, to give people an option?
Yes, it has been in place in some other service areas for a while now. I think it was more an equipment and technology and access to the systems, particularly for the customer services staff who have to deal with lots of different systems and information that's coming through. But I understand that has all now been resolved, and they are able to access things from home. Obviously, there is a requirement to have people in the workplace as well. Yeah. So depending on the levels of absence, that may have an impact. But yes, it's definitely something that would be a recommendation from, the last few months and moving forward as well.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
Okay, do we have anybody else, Tom, who have the hand up? Oh, sorry.
Kevin Shillito and Councillor Josbury have got their hands up, Chair.
Kevin, if you want to come in, please.
Thank you. Just a question arising from what's been said about home working. I noticed that up at the third most common cause of sickness absence is migraines and headaches. Now, that's always a problem that we traditionally associate with lighting and issues like that in the workplace. Where do we stand with doing those sorts of assessments of people's home working environment to see if that's a cause of headaches and the like? Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Yes, what we did probably 6 weeks ago now is we asked every individual that was home working to read through a presentation that the health and safety team had prepared, and then fill in an online form regarding their home working setup. A copy of that information went through to ourselves in HR and also through to the manager directly. And managers were asked to have those conversations with those members of staff regarding the home working setup, just to ensure that they were following best practice and staff were being proactive in that, but also that staff had the right equipment in order to enable them to work from home successfully without impacting on their well-being. So we are encouraging and trying to make sure that those conversations are taking place. And as discussed in the previous meeting, Kevin, I'll be reminding managers to make sure that those do happen. And anything that is flagged up on there, we will go through that information to make sure that appropriate actions have been addressed. We will, I think it'll probably be timely as well to go out and remind employees about some of the things that they can do to help themselves while working at home, but also review current arrangements in place, because I know some teams are now putting rota arrangements in place who are coming more into the workplace as well. But we also need to analyse this, as you correctly say, from a sickness absence perspective, and see whether these are ongoing long-term conditions regarding headaches and migraines, or whether that has been a new phenomenon within the last 6 months or so. We are looking at the next quarter's sickness information in the next 2 to 3 weeks. So we'll also do some analysis of that as well to see if it is an emerging pattern and trend moving forward.
Thanks for that.
Okay. Andrew, I think, wants to come in.
Hi. Right. Over the last 6 years, we've done a lot of work on stress, depression and mental health problems. I noticed that 2019 it was top of the list, second on the list 2018. I know it's one of the things that's mostly going to affect people because there's the sort of work and where have you. I just wondered if there's an overall trend of it coming down, whether what we've been doing over the last 6 years is actually bearing fruit.
Thank you. Yes, from a work-related perspective, in terms of stress and depression, yes, we have seen an increase in that area. We are experiencing more individuals having outside of work issues as well. And particularly during the last 6 months, we've had some individuals, not necessarily being off sick from work, but struggling with their mental health because of home working and the isolation that the lockdown has created for certain individuals. So it is an area that we are looking at more closely, particularly with the new emerging trends with home working and potentially if we have further lockdowns, how that might impact on individuals' well-being. But we have received really positive feedback from the steps and actions that we've put in place. There has been a slight shift in that now because we were doing face-to-face occupational health appointments, face-to-face counselling, physio, things like that to support people. And those are now having to be undertaken either via telephone or via Zoom or technology like this. So it does present a bit of a different challenge due to the current circumstances, but we are continuing to monitor that. But yeah, we have received real positive feedback from everything that's been put in place over the last 6 years.
That's excellent. Thank you for that.
Okay.
Chair, Councillor Clough had a hand up to speak.
Trish, you want to come in again?
Yeah, it was just a small point from a personal awareness from some people who are working from home. Sometimes in the past where they've had time when they're going from work to get into home, they've had time to wind down. And I just wondered what is being put in place for staff. So they're not just going straight from being at work straight into their home situation, which can sometimes not give them that time to wind down.
Yeah, we have issued significant advice and guidance to employees on that and made sure that wellbeing is part of the conversations, a one-to-one process that managers have. So we have sent out some hints and tips as well about, maybe taking a walk after work or making sure there is a distinction between your work area and your home and leisure area as well. Because you're right, if the laptop's there on the kitchen table, you can sit there for hours and just continue working. So it is going to be a kind of new discipline and mindset that individuals who are home working have to kind of proactively make an effort to make sure they do step away from that and do have that distinction. Because you're right, you can sit there all day and realise 3 hours have passed and you haven't got up and had a break from the computer, because it is different from being in the workplace where you have that separation.
Oh, that's brilliant. Well done.
Okay. Is there anybody else? Any other questions? Okay. Sarah, can I come in? And one thing, how have you dealt with the fact that certain employees have obviously been off for shielding? Has that been taken into account? And overall, how has that reduced? These figures are based on all employees. Has that percentage of employees reduced significantly during that period of lockdown?
Yeah, during this period, we have had a number of employees off shielding, as you mentioned. Some of those have been able to work from home during that period. Others may not have been because of the nature of the work that they've done. So we have supported those individuals wherever possible. Anybody on long-term shielding has remained on full pay, so there has been no concerns, from a financial perspective that there may be an impact on. in terms of the overall percentage, we still count that as all the employees. But what we're saying is if someone is shielding, if they're not poorly, they are classed as fit for work. It's only those that are actually poorly and would not be fit for work that we class as being on the sickness absence radar. But to my knowledge, we haven't had very many cases of those at all, particularly with the long-term shielders. They've all been fit for work. It's just following government guidance, which has meant that they haven't been impending for work, but they aren't included on the sickness figures.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you very much. Could we have a mover and a seconder to move that we note that report?
I'll move it, Chair. Councillor Clough.
I'll second it. Councillor Clark.
Thank you. Okay, can we have a show of hands for this, please?
It's all in favour, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Okay, can we move on to item 6, which is the health and safety Q1 report. We'll now consider the update report, and we've got I understand Rebecca Hutchinson to present this report. Rebecca, would you like to begin, please?
Yeah, good morning, thank you. Okay, so this is the Q1 report, reporting on accidents incurred in the quarter. As you can imagine, during lockdown, it's been reasonably quiet in terms of accident reporting. So we've got a reduced number of 5 recorded in the quarter. There were 3 lost time accidents reported, and 2 of them were over 7-day absences. As such, they were reported to the HSE under RIDDOR, the Reporting of Injuries, Diseases and Dangerous Occurrences Regulations. The main causes, as you can see, there were 2 slip, trips and falls. 1 was struck by a moving object, with 1 manual handling incident and 1 other medical incident. So the number of lost days recorded in the quarter is 51, down to the 2 RIDDOR reportable accidents we've just spoken about. 1 was incurred in street scene and a second in housing repairs. So obviously those are the services that continue to work. And in line with usual figures, those are the services where we see the majority of accidents occurring due to the nature of the activities. The overall number is significantly lower than the same period last year, but obviously that's due to the restrictions on work activities. So you've got the graphs which give the breakdown by accident type, the different categories, so whether it was an accident with sort of no lost time, anything that incurred lost time, and of those lost time accidents, the ones that went on to become RIDDOR reportable, where the lost days were distributed by service area, and the operational areas where accidents occurred. And then we've got a breakdown of sort of some basic details without giving too much away of what happened with all of the accidents. So we can see that the significant one in street scene, which incurred 30 days, was to do with the individual being clipped by a bin, which was in turn clipped by a car. And then the medical incident, which has incurred sort of 18 days for housing, is the one there at the bottom. Unfortunately, we've not been able to carry out any health and safety training in this quarter due to lockdown restrictions, but we are now resuming the health and safety training programme and looking at alternative ways to deliver. Obviously, face-to-face training is always preferred, but we are now looking at whether we can broadcast training via Zoom to increase numbers attending and obviously maintain social distancing. And that's everything. Thank you. If anybody's got any questions.
Chair, we have hands raised from Tricia Clough, Kevin Shillitoe and Chris McKinney.
Okay, Trish, would you like to fire your question?
Just wondering whether you'd considered doing podcasts and then people could report back when they'd seen the podcast.
Podcasts for
health and safety training.
Oh, so to record them and then play back at somebody's convenience. I don't think that was something that we considered, to be fair. We do use external trainers considerably for our training, so it's whether or not they'd be prepared to do that. If it was something that we were delivering, then yeah, I'm sure that we could do that. In fact, I do know that we've got some lone worker training coming up for elected members, and I believe it will be done on that sort of basis. But yeah, interesting suggestion, thank you.
Okay, Chris, would you like to come in?
Thank you, Chair. So yeah, it's me again in relation to more of around the COVID kind of measures, I guess. I know the period that's being monitored is the 1st of April to the 30th of June, and so some of like the peak lockdown period, probably not many people in the office. I'm a little surprised that there's no commentary on how the measures that were put in place, say as someone who works in the ARC, how, just a kind of a beginning of a kind of explanation of how that's working, given I think the risk assessment was first done for the ARC on the 13th of May, and then the protocol on the 26th of May. So those, it may be that it's just, a bit early, but and perhaps it's going to be addressed more in the next quarter. But it does seem appropriate to have some reference in, in some ways, the biggest health and safety matter we have in front of us, to actually have some reference in the report. So again, just a little surprised it's given it covers the period when the measures have been put in place. Personally, I've been coming into the office more regularly because I can do most of my job from home. Things like this are helpful, and IT have been brilliant, really. But I can't do all of my job from home, and so I've been coming in since the beginning of July. And I have to say, when I first saw the risk assessment, the protocol, I thought, this is amazing. This is brilliant. This is, government taking it seriously, and that's, that was reassuring, because you don't always see that around. And when being in the office, seeing how the desks and arrangements have been set out, again, well thought out and excellent, and to be commended to the health and safety team. I think that was really, really good setup. What I'm kind of more concerned about, and having discussions with other kind of workers in the office, how is it working, really? I mean, from seeing it in operation, you can see risks kind of popping up informally where people aren't keeping distance, the flow, people using desks that are not necessarily there to be used when there's too many people in the office. Risks are occurring. Again, hopefully as grown-ups we can kind of try and minimise and manage those. I'm aware that the latest risk assessment is issue 2, I believe, from the corporate folder, so from June. Protocol 1's, I think, due to be reviewed at the end of this month. 1 is overdue in terms of its review. I appreciate it's not easy also, and there's often competing demands being placed on the health and safety officers. So it's just a comment, really. I imagine it's something that health and safety have got in hand and will, improve, rectify, keep up that good work, build on that really solid foundation. So it was just that kind of commentary. Was it, I suppose, in terms of the question, is it just too early for this quarter's report, and that's why there was nothing really to add? And is it something that will be brought into the reports much more as we go forward? Thank you, Chair.
Okay, if there's an appetite for how COVID measures are working in the safety committee report, absolutely we can include that. We have been doing COVID, what we call COVID secure inspections. So that's checking on whether and it's only ever a snapshot at the time. So if you've observed people not observing social distancing, I would ask that, that you would challenge people and that you encourage colleagues to maintain the social distancing. We can't be eyes and ears everywhere at all times. I do know that we've got markers in place. As I say, we've got a protocol to follow. We would encourage service managers to feed that out to their employees and for the employees to adhere to that. We're following the government 5 steps and the HSE hierarchy of controls when we're looking at measures. So obviously trying to avoid where we can. That's why there's very much an encouragement for people to continue to work at home. As with any sort of communication of the rules, it relies a lot on individuals and their personal responsibility to follow those rules. It's not always possible to enforce. It's more of an encouragement. And if you see things happening that you aren't comfortable with, please do raise it with us, and then we can raise it on a council-wide level with service managers, or possibly just with certain team members if required. That's absolutely fine. In terms of the hot desking, that's absolutely not an ideal situation, and we would discourage hot desking as far as possible. That said, in order to maintain distancing, which is probably the key control measure when people are in the offices, it is sometimes necessary to use desks that maybe we've marked out of use or that people wouldn't use. But I do know that property services have been really thorough in providing sufficient cleaning materials. And again, it comes down to personal responsibility, and it's in the protocol where hot desking absolutely must take place. Then we need to make sure that the desks are cleaned, everything's wiped down, and then people must wash their hands or use a sanitizer. But as for putting things into the next safety committee report, I can include that, absolutely.
Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you. And thank you, Chair.
I think, Kevin, you wanted to come in?
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick question about the 2 Rideau reportable accidents. I appreciate you can't go into details, but I'm just going to ask a general question. In both cases, it would appear that there's either what you'd call an innocent explanation. It's either the driver's fault or somebody's knee just happened to be prone to a problem, or there may be what I'd call an organisational problem. So in the first case, was it a lack of perception and awareness of the vehicle? In the second case, were they not using proper PPE for their knees? Have we identified the problem, and is there anything organisational that needed doing in either of those cases? Thank you.
If I may go first on the street scene one, Chair. The issue was in general lack of perception. The member of staff was pulling a wheeled bin to the curbside. The bin was slightly overhanging the curb edge, and the car was driving near to the curb edge. The car clipped the actual bin, spun the bin round, and it hit the member of staff, hence the accident. It caused some severe bruising, but nothing of a substantive injury. That's the overview of that one.
Okay, you happy with that, Kevin?
So from the street scene point of view, fair enough. I just wondered if anybody knows whether it was an operational issue or just one of those things on the housing case.
Okay.
I've got my hand up. Can everyone hear me? Can everyone hear me? Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Mark, come in.
So that particular case, I actually went out to see the operative because obviously we'd got a few issues. He had got an issue with his knee anyway, a long-term issue, and it was just one of those things. At the end of the day, his knee just went. So there was no, he'd got all his PPE, etc. He'd done everything, followed all the protocols. It literally, his knee just went as he knelt down.
That's great. Thanks for that, Mark.
Okay. Any other comments?
Chair, Bronwyn MacArthur Williams has a hand raised.
Bronwyn, please.
Thank you, Chair. May I just refer back to the comments made by Chris McKinney? Thank you, Chris, for your approval of our documentation in place in terms of COVID-19 arrangements. May I just also advise you that in terms of implementing COVID-19 arrangements at Bolsover District Council properties, particularly the Ark and Riverside Depot, the Health and Safety team have had significant support from Property and Commercial Services at Bolsover, namely Matthew Cooper's team, have been very supportive and helpful in enabling us to implement the required arrangements. And I would just like to acknowledge that. Thank you.
That's a good point, Bronwyn. Yeah, extend the thanks to Matt and his team as well.
Okay. Any other questions on that report? In that case, I would like to move that we note the report. Could I have a seconder, please?
I'll second that, Chair.
Thank you, Kev. Can we take a vote on that, please?
That's all in favour, Chair.
Okay, let's move. Okay, thank you. I'd like to thank members and officers for their attendance today, and that concludes the business of the meeting. I'll close the meeting and ask the live stream to be ended. To the public that's been with us